Today, we are going to be working on how to put together your files in ZipForms because we have a great document holder here. So, I mean, I'm sure you guys have all heard of SkySlope and Dropbox and all these other things that people use to keep their files organized. Well, I find it repetitive to do your files in ZipForms, execute your files in ZipForms, and then transfer your files out of ZipForms into another program just to store them. That's what SkySlope is, right? SkySlope at one point in time used to have a cool feature where you could go right into your zip to your forms and do them there, and then they got rid of that feature, and then they brought that feature back because everybody complained. We used to have SkySlope back in the day when I was just a team and not a broker. Yeah, when I was just a team here, my team had SkySlope, and it was a pretty good program. So I do like that concept of breaking your file into its component parts. Why is that good? Well, for me as the broker, it's super easy when you call me and say, hey, can you check the SPQ and see what you think about this thing? And I can go into your file, excuse me, go right to your SPQ and not have to dig through a bunch of garbage to get to it. So that's why we have this system. So it's part of ZipForms. It's already built into ZipForms. And we use a different version of ZipForms than other people. We use the broker edition, which gives us a lot more features, and it gives me a lot more oversight and compliance. So I started a sample transaction, which I called training sample. Did I spell that right? Yes, I did. Okay. Sometimes my fingers type faster than my brain. So we have this sample document. You guys have all seen the summary page before. I just put in, the address. All this information really is not important at this point in time. What is important is how our file looks. So I have I'm going to just minimize this over here in the corner. I have a template that I've created that you guys all use, as everybody who's been here for a while now knows, but I'm going to, back this down to Maggie, who still hasn't done a transaction here yet. When you start a transaction, you will have a template that you've created for yourself that has your information in it, and it will merge with the template that I have created so that the two templates will blend together. And when you open up a new transaction, this is what your folder should look like. Now, I did make some changes to it this morning because, as our forms change, I have to update these every now and then. So I did add a few more placeholders in here, and I'll show you a couple of other little things that I did. So we have the parent folders for every part of the transaction. At any point in time, stop me if you have a question.
So now if I go on to that's going to be those three things are going to be on my account as well.
Yes, all of this is going to show up.
Yeah.
Not more than three. You're going to have your cover sheets going to be there.
Yeah.
Your listing docs, sales docs, all the parts of the transaction that are important. It's all going to be there, ready to go. So it's basically, I'm trying to make this as plug and play as possible for you. This particular template is for a listing. So you'll see the first folder says listing documents. If you were writing a purchase, that folder wouldn't be there. So I have separate templates for whatever it is you're trying to do. So in this case, when we take a listing, you're starting a listing, this is how it starts. If you click into the folder, the forms that you would need to write up a listing are right there. The two main forms, right? Our residential listing agreement, that's the form. So remember, now you see all these other things. These are placeholders. They have blank pieces of paper in them, so they're nothing. These ones, they say ZFX, zip form document. So these are the actual documents, and that's why you can see them. So this is our listing agreement. So you do not have to go over here to the Forms tab and add the listing agreement. You see it's already highlighted. It means it's already in the transaction. So all you do is just click and go right into the right into the agreement. Okay, and that's going to open up I don't, we don't have a chance anymore, do we? Did they kill, they must have killed, it's dead? When did it go dead? A couple days ago? 8th or 9th? Okay. So you can see we go right into our transaction. If you needed to do the SCLM with this, you'll notice because it's already in the transaction, it's sitting over here in the bottom right corner. You don't have to go get it. All you would have to do is just grab it and drag it. And now it's in here for you to fill out. Okay, so the purpose of this, plug and play. All right, so you go in there, you fill it out, you send it out, and then I'm going to show you guys in a little bit what happens when it comes back and how do we break it up. Okay, so we'll get to that just in a second. We'll go over this template completely first. Okay, so this is where this goes back to. Come on, internet speed. Okay, here we go. So we have our residential listing agreement, so our SELM, and then you'll see these are placeholders. These placeholders are where you put documents that are fully executed. Until they become fully executed, they should just be out here in this space, right? So we'll talk about that more when it comes to like disclosures and advisories. A lot of times we get disclosures half executed and then we have to execute them. And I've created a little folder for that as well, because I think it's easier to try to keep the confusion in the mess, right? Because it can get a little messy in here when you have partially executed things that you're executing. Then you have to try to figure out, okay, I have 3 TDSs, which one's executed, which one isn't executed, right? Which one's signed or not signed.
I edited it just so that when you put a little note in there, it has a little blue thing, whatever. Yeah, see where it says that little blue, see right there, the eye? Yeah, the eye.
Yes.
So I'll sometimes, well, in the beginning, I would do that.
Add a description.
So then I would just need to put my mouse over it and go, oh yeah, that's not the one. Because I used to spend hours.
Yeah, searching when you would have a collection of garbage in here. So actually something that I don't know why it took me so long to learn, but I saw Brooke do it the other day and I was like, genius. So once she sends something out to be fully executed and it's out there getting signed and you know it's going to come back, you could take the form, the PDF or whatever that you sent out to have fully executed and drag it over into the archive, right? And then it will get out of the confusion here and it'll sit over here in the archive folder. You're not deleting it. It'll just be over here. And so every time you send something out to be fully executed, take the unexecuted document, throw it in your archive folder, just so that it's out of the confusion. It was pretty smart idea. I was like, oh, geez, that's smart. Yes, because it gets very confusing. So as you can see here, this is our disclosures and advisories. So as a listing agent, I have a larger responsibility to disclose. So I have more forms. I have my agent visual inspection, the statewide buyer and seller. You have that disclosure information advisory if you feel like that's something that you want to give to your clients before you give them their disclosure so they can read the darn thing and understand why they have to disclose. Pretty smart idea. Transfer disclosure statement, seller property questionnaire, the WCMD, the water conserving fixtures and the carbon monoxide detectors, I believe. The fire hardening and defensible space. I put this one in here, even though in practice, we all tend to use the one that's built into the property ID NHD report. If you haven't seen one of those yet, we'll show you one of those. We use property ID pretty much exclusively, and they have a great, when you receive your NHD back, you get the full report, and then you get one that's called the signature pages, which has the signature page of the NHD. It has the HERS, the home energy rating system. It has your environmental hazards. It has your earthquake, your lead, if those are necessary. And then it also has a fire hardening and defensible space built right into it, which is pretty cool. Because otherwise this form can get a little ugly, especially with who's seen the tree, the 3-page tree to see whether you qualify for it or not is highly confusing. It was like a 3-page form to make it easy and they just confuse the hell out of it. So it's kind of crazy. And then you have your MCA over here. This one, don't forget about your affiliated business disclosure, because we do have a relationship with,
Question,
Yes.
but if you're using a home warranty, do you have to sign it? Cause I've had an agent send it back to me, that we're not using it. So I didn't sign
yeah,
it.
I would, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, we're supposed to disclose what our business affiliations are regardless, just in case you decide to use one of those companies or a company that's attached to one of those companies. Whether or not the other side signs it and returns it really doesn't matter, as long as we've delivered it, we've done our duty, right? Our duty is never to get the other side to sign anything and return it. Our duty is always to deliver or have our clients sign whatever comes.
Another question. Is it AB 38 form or something like that?
Maybe.
AB 38 is your fire hardening and defensible space. Yeah, that's what that law is, the AB 38. Okay, and then I don't know how this guy got out of place. These two are supposed to be
Getting back
switched.
to AB 38.
Mhm.
The listing agent and seller, supposed to be getting that inspection as soon as possible.
No. So the nothing in the AB 38 makes it a point of sale requirement. Okay, it's just a disclosure at this point in time. It's not a point of sale requirement, meaning in the form will actually say, if you have done the inspection and have the certificate within the last 6 years, you must provide, or last 6 months, excuse me, you must provide it. But if you have not, the form is defaults that it's the buyer's responsibility within the first year of owning the property to get the inspection and get the certification. So it actually pushes the weight, the burden on the buyer. No, heck no. No, nobody ever does it. No. So at one point in time, could this become a point of sale requirement? Probably. It probably will. But in the beginning, yeah, I think part of understanding that you're selling what, 400,000 houses a year in California. That's 400,000 inspections. And do we have the manpower hours in the fire departments to go out and do these inspections? So yeah, so they're not making a point of sale at this point in time. So again, a massive catalog of placeholders, and it's going to be a little different in the here we are a seller. So a seller is going to generate disclosures, have their client sign them, and then send them to the buyer's agent. So you should only be receiving back fully executed disclosures. Now, in the case, and I'm going to just flop over here real quick to our other template for when we are representing the buyer. Let me just jump over. So it's going to be here when we're representing a buyer. In our disclosures folder, when we represent a buyer, we have very few disclosures that we would fill out. Maybe when we're doing an offer, I see a lot of people put an SBSA and an MCA in there as part of the offer, because you should be having that conversation with your buyer, especially the MCA, before you write the offer. Hey, the offer we're writing today is your best offer, not my best offer. The market could change tomorrow. We could be writing an offer that is, seems like it's at asking price, but if the market dumps while we're in escrow, you can't come back to me and say, hey, you made me write a dumb offer. Your offer. All right. And then of course, when you're the buyer's agent, you have your own agent visual inspection. So we have that one in here as well. And again, the affiliated business disclosure. The difference is I put this folder in here, the signature folder. So I'm representing the buyer. We're under contract. What am I going to receive in the first 7 days? A gigantic packet of disclosures. So instead of throwing them in here and getting them all confused, you can just drop them in here. So they're separate. There's the disclosures, your disclosure package. If you got a big document, like a giant PDF, you would just put it in the signature folder. And basically what this is supposed to tell you is, hey, I got a bunch of docs that my buyer needs to sign. And then after my buyer signs them, now they're executed. Now I can come back and put them in the placeholders instead of putting them in the placeholders or having them all mixed in here.
Put it all in that signature.
Yeah, anything your buyer needs to sign, just
Yeah.
throw it in this folder. And then you know, okay, these are the documents that we need to sign. And if you wanted to, if you had multiple coming over, you could continue to add folders in here, right? If you put in another folder, it'll put another, you could put 2 or 3 folders inside the signature folder. But I just kind of trying to help get it set up for you guys. Yes.
Well, sorry, but you had me email those docs to ZipForms. Now I can just drop them in, right?
There, yeah, we can talk about that. There's like 3 different ways that you can get a document into these transactions, right? You can either email them in, drag them in, or like put document open and search them in your computer and put them in that way. So there's multiple ways to put them in there. So I'm going to go back to that transaction because we're going to talk a little. We'll go through a couple little more, and then we'll go into actually how to split stuff and get working here. Where's my sample data?
Now you didn't have DocuSign?
No,
Well, so, or not DocuSign, but ZipForms?
ZipForm, yeah, but not the broker.
Yeah, everybody has ZipForms, but not everybody has broker edition. The brokers, so ZipForms for all realtors is a member benefit. It's free, but we pay for broker edition because it has all these extra features. So some of the extra features being, if you guys, when you've had the ability to work on each other's files, right? I can go into the settings and say, Lacey can see Julie's files, Maggie can see Brooke's files, and you guys can work on each other's files. And then again, me just being able to go into your files. If you have your separate ZipForms, I don't have that access. So when you're out of town and you say, hey, can you help me write an addendum real quick? And I can go in there and do it. It looks like you're doing it, even though I'm doing it. Okay. So then we have another one for repairs, reports, and invoices. So again, I'm the seller in this case. So as I get my reports, I'm going to put them in there: septic, roof, pest, well, home inspection, right? And then I would never be, as a listing agent, I would never be writing a request for repairs. So there's no need for that form in here. On the buyer's side, there's a request for repairs sitting in here. Now, what would I write if I was a listing agent? I would write a response. So I put the response in here for you. As their request comes in and you execute it, it would go here. If we were to fill out a response and get it executed, it would go here. If you have a situation where you have a second request for repairs, you can stack multiple forms into the placeholder. And what it will do is it will show, instead of that turning red with the PDF, it'll turn red with the PDF, and you'll see another one behind it. It'll kind of shadow 2 forms on top of each other. So you can continue to stack as many RRs as you would need to. The same thing with the septic cert placeholder. You could stack the report and the cert with a pest report. You can put the original pest report in there. You can put the work authorization on top of it, and you can put the final clearance. You could stack them all inside there. Does that make sense?
Tell you what happens on a request for repairs, that they are using an addendum form to list. So that can all go in there.
Absolutely. So if they do a text overflow,
Right.
in how ZipForms will do that when they build a text overflow, when it sends out, it should still send out as one PDF, and you would be able to put that in there. If it happened to be multiple documents, you would just stack them in there. Yeah, great question, because they do, because a lot of these things automatically text overflow now
Yeah.
when you start writing a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, our miscellaneous documents. This is anything else in the transaction that doesn't really have a place. If somebody wanted to maybe share an electric bill for their solar, or even, I would say the solar lease would probably go like in reports, but if they wanted to share their electric bill, their water bill, some other information about the property, you would put it in miscellaneous documents. And then we have closing docs. So this is everything that has to do with closing. So our VP, in this case, again, we are on the listing side, so there's no form for us. If this was the buyer's template, then there would be, the VP would be sitting in here waiting for you to fill out. But as a seller, you're going to want to receive the VP, the home warranty, your commissions agreement, which is in your agent packet, the CDA, which you would produce or right, you would still produce a CDA, I would sign it. I want a copy of that in here. Go ahead. There you go. Okay. Our legal services form, which I put here, it's in both buyer and seller closing docs, because it's where you want to find your legal services form. And then your closing statement at the end. So when you receive your seller's settlement statement or your buyer's settlement statement, their HUD-1 form, put it in here, because they may come back and ask you for it 3 or 4 years from now, or when they're doing their taxes, or when they go to sell the house 4 years later and they need to see what their gains are. You have a copy of it. I keep a hard copy of them, but it's great if you guys have a digital copy of those. So who's ever had somebody ask for their HUD-1 years later? Maggie, anybody else?
Your what?
They could, but when your client's probably going to call you, so it's nice to have. I think they're nice to have.
Can you hear me, Josh?
I have a hard copy of them all too. Every single one of them I file away. And then also your checks, right? Your closing statement would include your actual seller statement or buyer statement and all of the checks. That's why we make copies of the checks. You should be taking those packets, scanning them and emailing them to yourselves and sticking them in here. Why? Well, what happens if we have a discrepancy at the end of the year on your 1099 and it doesn't make sense to you? Our numbers don't add up. All right, well, let's go look at all your transactions. Let's pull up copies of all of your checks. So, yes.
A lot of my things are not closed. They're just not closed.
What do you mean they're not closed?
When you close it complete, when the file closes, the escrow closes, they're not closed on here, so they're all sitting here active.
Yeah.
I went to go close a couple of mine
Don't
and
you
it
have to
says
do
I
that?
can't.
Yeah,
because
me
you have to
neither.
approve it.
Yeah, you like none.
All right.
So,
Yeah.
does that matter?
No, whether or not I go in and verify every single one of them. I mean, you guys have to take some of that responsibility too. We don't have a compliance officer. If we ever get larger, then we can afford a compliance officer. We'll have somebody go in here and do that. But we've always had a history here at Country Real Estate of not checking your file before you got your paycheck. And I think everybody's always appreciated that. I know a lot of places are like, the commissions checks will come and they'll sit in my drawer until you prove to me that this is complete. And yeah, see, you guys are all, ooh, screw that. Yeah, I want my money now. Yeah.
Auditing C10.
Yeah, so right? And you're having these arguments with these agents and so, well, I asked for that document and they wouldn't give it back to me.
Yeah.
All right, then I want a printout of the email that says they're not going to send it to you, all that kind of stuff. Ruben and Dale never did that here, and I never thought that was really the best thing to just start doing. So you guys get paid when your transactions close. It's your guys' responsibility to put these files together. You guys are professionals. I expect you to be professionals. Well, so when something is missing up there, then you need to go find it. Right? Or you need to talk to your TC and say, hey, where is
Have we got?
whatever the form, right? Which ones are the important ones? I mean, they're all important, but which ones are the really important ones? Yeah, the ones that say required next to, well, I can make them all say required, but I would say it's probably your disclosures, right? Your TDS, your SPQ, the things that are statutory. Remember when we talked about the contract, there's a difference between contractual forms and statutory forms. What's the difference? Who knows? What does it mean to be statutory? What's a statute? It's the law, right? That means there's a law somewhere that says in a real estate transaction, these forms are mandated. Correct. All right. So now when I'm working on the listing side, what happens if I get multiple offers?
Yeah.
Or I get an offer at all? You're going to want to put them somewhere separate until you execute that offer. What about if you guys negotiate it back and forth and it doesn't ever execute and you decide you're going to move on or wait for another offer? So what you do here when you're working your transaction, when you go into the offers folder, you just hit add a folder, and I'm going to just do it now and we'll delete it. Let's say you got an offer from, me personally, I just put the agent. So let's say I got an offer from Terry, right? So I would put in Terry Jurgens like this and hit OK, and it would create a folder And now Terry's offer that she just sent me would go inside this folder, and from in here, I would negotiate it.
So the whole thing, the RPA.
I would negotiate it until I got it under contract. I would negotiate it with the counter offer until it was perfect.
Mhm.
And then when it was perfect, then I would transfer it to the sales documents tab.
Oh.
And the RPA would go here and everything would go in here. The counter offers, everything would go here. Because I don't want to necessarily put it in here and start filling things up. And then the offer falls apart and it never executes. All right. Or if I have multiple offers, then maybe I have one from Terry and then I have one. I'm just going to use agents in our office because that's just nicer. And I have one from Randy. So I create another folder in here, and in my offers, now I'm working these two offers with seller multiple counter offers now. So I'm doing this all away from the placeholders and the sales documents to keep this clean and keep it from getting confused. Okay, now let's say I like Terry's offer. Sorry, Randy, but I like Terry's offer better. I'm going to work with Terry's offer. Now I can take Randy's offer and I can drag it and put it over here in the dead. And so this, I don't think it'll do it in the template. I'm in a template right now. But when you're in a transaction, you'll have the ability to take this and drag it into the dead offers. Because remember, it's our responsibility for auditing purposes. If we have 4 or 5 offers, we have to keep all of those 4 or 3 that we didn't take. We have to.
With the dead offers, it would stay there.
It stays there in the dead offers. And then you have a way to audit to say, yeah, we had 4 offers on this. We took Terry's, but we didn't take Randy's and Darla's and Mariana's, right? So that's what that would be for. Let me just delete these so that I don't mess up my template here. Delete. Okay, so I'm gonna jump out of the templates. Also, we also have it. No nuts.
Right, it's like a. Right, sorry.
But I don't think so. They done there.
So we also have a folder for communication.
That's a good.
So if you guys are, should be at the end of a transaction going into your emails and those large email strings, printing those out or turning those into digital PDFs. Does anybody know how to turn those into a PDF? Have you ever gone to like anything in your computer and tried to print it? And then there's usually a little button that says save as a PDF instead of print. So you can take anything that you would normally print and turn it into a PDF. You can take that PDF and drag it into communications.
That's like large file, that then indents it somehow. I don't know.
Oh, does it? It shrinks them down? Oh, so when you hit save as PDF? Yeah. So you always want to keep track of your communications, especially, text messages. How would you do that? Well, depending on what kind of computer you have, you can with some, like with a Apple, for example. Let's say Julie and I were in a no, I'm going to take my cousin. I'll take my cousin. So he and I just had this big conversation last night. I could actually drag them and highlight them and copy them. And then when I go and paste them somewhere, it will say who said what in the text message.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so I could, for example, put it over here in let me just, I know we're getting a little bit off track here, but
Especially when you have agents that don't like you.
yeah, or say mean and nasty things to you. Yeah. So if I was to put it into like any kind of word processing doc, let's see what it does here. Okay, look, it has images and everything. What Josh said, what Nick said, what Josh said. So it's all in here. Now I can turn this into a PDF and stick it in my communications file. So when there's some kind of an issue later on, you can say, no, here's the PDF printout of the conversation we had about this. So you'll be able to document all those things, stick those in your communications folder over here, right? So this will be full of PDFs essentially. So you can keep track of how that conversation went. Okay, so let's go back to, we'll go out of the template. We'll go back to our sample transaction. Let me just make sure that I don't think anybody else tried to jump in. No. Okay.
Start good now, we can see 'em.
They're addicted.
Yeah. they would-
All right, so we're gonna do a couple of breakdowns. One of the ones that we get all the time is the agent opening package, right? Escrow always sends us the opening package. What's in that? Anybody know off the top of your head? What's in our agent opening package?
Commission disbursements, of course, and
Commission instructions,
escrow instructions.
escrow instructions, prelim, page 16, yeah, page 16, the acceptance page. What else? There's one more thing that we're looking for. Oh, well, there's two more
NHD.
things. The NHD is one of them. They're usually in there as well. And there's one other little thing that happens. That's it.
EMD.
You receive. Well
Page
done.
16.
Right, very good. Somebody. Okay, so here's a agent. Here's an agent opening package. And the question is how do we get all that information into our placeholders? And so there's a really cool little feature. It does a couple of different things.
I usually like doing that when I do it, because it's not often.
Is it-
Very
is it-
satisfying.
Yeah,
It is very satisfying.
yeah.
Okay. Oh, what's in the agent opening package? Starts off usually with the escrow instructions, right? And what are we looking for when we're reading the escrow instructions, guys? We're making sure that escrow has the right price. I've actually closed a transaction once where they goofed up on the price and it screwed up the entire loan. And they had to stay on the lender's private books for 6 months so then they could refi it. That was with Nations Lending. It was escrow's fault. Nobody caught it. It was off by like $10,000. So you're looking for the price. Okay, you're looking for what I would say, not necessarily their close of escrow date, but the acceptance date, right? What do they have the same acceptance date that we have? And then are they calculating the close of escrow the right way? If it lands on a Saturday, are they pushing it to the Friday in front? Or are they putting it to the Monday after like they're supposed to? Right? It's supposed to always go to the Monday after. And we'll talk about that next time we talk about RPAs and how to count days. Okay, so those are what we're really looking for. Who knows what this sentence means right here, or this little section right here? This is one of my favorite little things that I love to argue with transaction coordinators over. What are docs signed in counterpart? What does that
That's,
mean?
can you hear me?
Okay, so when I fill out a listing agreement,
I don't
I
think you
make
can
my
hear me.
seller sign the listing agreement, the agency, the PRBS, the fair housing, the fair appraisal, the wire fraud, right? He signs all that stuff. And then a buyer's agent sends me a complete packet full of junk for an offer with the PRBS, the wire fraud, if the fair housing, the fair appraisal. What do we all do? We send it all to our seller and make them sign those all over again. We don't need to, though. We have a document that has our signature on it, and they have a document that has their signature on it. When you bring them together, the two documents, they're considered executed in counterpart. They're signed in counterpart. So you don't always have to have everybody's signature on the same document if you have if each person's signature on their own document. You just bring the two documents together. All right. A lot of people don't understand that. And so you can just send them your PRBS and then the TC will be like, but this isn't fully executed. I'm like, yeah, it is. You have yours, we have ours, put them together. They're signed. Yeah, it's executed.
Everybody doesn't believe that.
Nobody believes that, but the escrow instructions clearly state it. Yeah. Okay, so that's our escrow instructions. It basically tells it's the general rules of engagement that the buyer and seller must follow when we go through an escrow. Okay, what else is in here? We talked about, it should pop up here. I'm not going to go through all 108 pages of this, but yeah, we'll have our commissions.
The buyer is on, buyer sign.
Nothing, because they get their own copy. This is just for us. and they will sign their own stuff. So you do not have to send any of this out to your client to sign. Well, NHD, yeah, we have them and that, but see, that's separate from this because the seller has a 7-day requirement to get that NHD over. So you should have the NHD in your hand before you get this. You should have already ordered it and have a copy of it and have it executed and sent. This sometimes doesn't make it to us in 7 days, depending on how busy they are. Sometimes, yeah, you've had them come late.
Send me the commission instructions. And like have these, like send them to our clients to sign. And I'm like, you don't even, what are you doing? Like why, you know?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, they don't know what they're doing, unfortunately. Okay, so what's the important thing that, yes, go ahead.
Are Sarah and Randy blocked from speaking?
No, they would have to just unmute themselves. Why are they sending?
Can you hear us?
Oh, they have to unmute. Let me see if I can unmute.
I'm unmuted.
Me
Let
too.
unmute. Randy, go ahead and talk.
Oh, there you go. I'm just gonna tell you, they can't hear it.
Yeah, I can't, I've been speaking, but I don't think you're hearing me.
Yeah, I got
I
you
can,
now.
he-
Sarah also.
Go ahead. You have a question?
no, I
Oh.
did, but now I can't remember what they were.
Sharon, what about you?
Oh, I was just trying to answer questions earlier, but that's okay.
Oh, okay, you were okay. Sorry about that, guys. I thought we had it set up for the TV and I thought I would be able to hear you, but I got you turned up here now. Okay, we're learning as we go. Okay, so we have this huge document. What do we do with it? So there's this great feature that's built into ZipForms called split and rotate. Split and rotate will handle a few different items. Number one, it will split up a document into its component parts for us, or however we ask it to do it. If somebody was to send you a scanned copy, sometimes a page comes turned. It will rotate that page so you can get it upright. Also, who's ever received a packet, a scanned packet where the RPA is numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 7, 5, 10, 11. Yeah, completely out of sequence. So there's a way that you can resequence all of these as well. So what we're going to do with this one, I'm going to show you guys. We have that document that we just looked at. This is the agent packet. It's inside the split and rotate feature. We start by hitting add a split. And it's going to take a second because we're on Zoom. Okay. So we know that we have multiple placeholders in here. One of them is for the EMD. So let's go find the receipt of the EMD down here. I know this one has one. So we just keep scrolling through. There's page 16. Here's our EMD. This is the digital receipt and the check they sent. You'll see here that the EMD is on page 37. So if I go here to enter pages and I put in 30, oops, sorry about that. I goofed that up. Here we go. If I put in page 37, okay, and then here hit fill a placeholder, because it's already a placeholder, you'll see a list of the placeholders. One of them will say EMD receipt. Now I click that and I hit OK. So this means that when I finally am done and I hit save, it's going to take page 37 out of this giant document and shove it into the placeholder for the EMD. Okay, then I'm going to do another because I have the acceptance page, page 16, right? This is the one that the escrow officer assigns the escrow number and it also puts the acceptance date on it. So it's an important page. So yes.
It says 36, so that's the page number that you use, not like down there.
Oh, yeah. You don't use this page number down here. You use this page number here. So this is page 36. And I'm going to show you two things. When I go to hit fill a placeholder, not only am I looking for page 36, but now that I filled the EMD, it disappears. So
Mhm.
you can't accidentally stick two things in the same placeholder. Or if you're looking for a placeholder and it isn't there, then oops, you must have stuck something in there already that's not supposed to be there. That's your cue that you might have messed up. So every time you use a placeholder, it will eliminate itself from this list. So now we're doing page 16 acceptance. We hit page 16 acceptance. All right. What else is in this little thing? Well, there's our NHD, right? So this is correct. So I probably wouldn't take this particular NHD yet because it's not executed, neither is this fire hardening. But what I would take out of here is here's the actual NHD itself. It begins on page 44 and it probably goes all the way down to the bottom. So it's 44 to 108. So I would hit add a split, page 44 to 108. So 44-108, fill a placeholder. Now, this is not the NHD signature page. This is just the actual full report, natural hazard disclosure full report. Okay. Now, what happens if there was a page in between the end? Go ahead, Brooke.
You do like 44-106 and then comma and then.
Correct. If I do 44-106, comma 108, it's going to pick up pages 44 through 106. It's going to skip 107 and it's going to pick up 108. Okay, this is also really good if RPA or something is out of order, right? You could put in, so I'm going to just make this 108. So let's say we were doing an RPA. Pages 1 through 6 were right, but then 8 was 7 and 7 was 8. So you would go like this and then 9 through 16. And it would take 1 through 6 and then throw 7 or 8 in front of 7 and then go back to 9 through 16. So you could reorganize that goofed up document. Does that make sense? Okay. So we have 44 through 108 and we could just do those for now. We don't need to do anything else. Let's just start with that. When I hit save, it's going to do two things. It's going to keep the original document in the same condition that it was. Here's the agent opening package, what we just split. It hasn't been touched. It's still whole. Okay, so if you goof up, you're not goofing up the original file. It took the page 16, put it in the placeholder, the EMD, put it in the placeholder, took the natural hazard disclosure, put it in the placeholder. So now when you say, hey, Josh, did they get the EMD in on that file? I don't know. I'm out of town. I can't look at my folder right now. I can come to your transaction and go, oh, yeah, here it is right here. And I'm just looking at the EMD only. I'm not having to dig through a 108-page document to try to find it. So this makes my life easier.
What happened?
myself. There we go. All right, we're back. Okay, so we're gonna go to these disclosures here. So the way I did it last time, you guys remember I opened up the transaction, I opened up the file, and then I hit split and rotate. You can also go to the little blue arrow and you'll find the split and rotate feature right here. Okay, so there's a lot of cool things in this little menu. We could go on for 5 hours, but we're just going to keep this to just this today. So there's all kinds of little tips and tricks hidden in all those little menus. Okay, so here's our disclosures. Again, now, what do we do in this case where it's the wildfire disaster advisory, which I'm not a big fan of this form, and so I don't have it as a placeholder, but it's here. And it's only signed by the buyer. The seller doesn't have to sign the darn thing. So really, why are they sending it to me to begin with? Because it really doesn't even belong to us as a listing agent, but it's here. So what do? I hit add split. It's 2 pages long, so I go pages 1 through 2. And now I don't have a name for it because I don't have a placeholder for it. I can't put it somewhere. So I could choose the standard name, which means it'll just take me to a list of all of the forms, and I could go to the wildfire, I go down here to the wildfire disaster. Yeah, right. Instead of doing that, and I also don't like to use the big long name when it's a form like this. I would just do like the WFDA, right? Oops, SADA, WFDA. And now we'll see when I save it, it's not going to put it in a placeholder. It's going to have it float out here to the side, which is fine. Good place for it because we really don't want to necessarily put it in a placeholder. Then I got my SBSA, right? That's going to be what, pages 3 through 17 or 18. So we go down in 16, 17. So 3 through 17. We go 3 through 17. And this one does have a placeholder, SBSA. We just scroll down to the S's. Statewide, or is it a little further down? There it is. SBSA, hit OK. And what's next? Or WCMD, so pages 18 and 19. So again, just add a split. Pages 18 and 19. Oops. Sometimes it runs a little slow because it takes a lot of computer memory to do this. Fill a placeholder. Go down to the bottom, water conserving, carbon monoxide, there it is. And we'll do one more. Let's do like, oh, here we go. Let's do the NHD signature page. So it's actually signature, all the pages. So there's that one. Does this have, I don't know if this has more in there. Well, let's just do that one for now. So that's page 23. So we hit add a split. We do page 23. 23. Fill a placeholder. And then you'll see one for natural hazard disclosure signature page. Okay. Hit save. And again, it's not going to alter the original file. This Glenview disclosures is still in its whole form. The WFA, which we did not have a placeholder for, now shows up down here. It's still a document to the transaction. It's just one that we don't necessarily put in as a placeholder. Now my signature page is full, my statewide buyer and seller, and my WCMD. They're starting to fill up. So you can see as you go through the course of a transaction, you're just slowly filling up all of these different placeholders. All right. Your AVIDs are going to go in here. Anything else that you might have. If you see any of these placeholders that have the blue exclamation point in the bottom corner, if you hover over it, it will say, if built prior to January 1, 1960. So that means we don't have to have an earthquake questionnaire because the home was built after 1960. So it's the majority of houses up here, except for the houses that are in the old part of downtown. You're going to have to fill those out. Same thing with this one. The lead-based paint disclosure, pre-1978. So if the house is older than 1978, you're not required to fill one of those out. Okay? So those little blue information bars will usually tell you that there's something there. Okay.
Hey, Josh,
Yes, sir.
can you hear me?
Yes.
If there's a form like that, WFA, and we save it, or some other form that the other agent sends us, like another, like Bakersfield rules and regulations and stuff that they want us to sign.
Mhm.
And sometimes we get it, sometimes I stick it in there, sometimes I don't. But do you want us to put down the down there in the corner where the paper clip is? Where you can make it needs review?
You know what? Again, we don't have a compliance person that's dedicated. I don't have enough time to sit around and review them all. I mean, again, I'm kind of relying on you guys at this point in time, or your
Okay.
TCs, to make sure that there's signatures on all these documents, that they're filled out correctly. If we get to that point one day, we'll have a compliance officer looking at all this stuff. We really haven't had a big issue with it over time. I can't remember the last time I saw a set of disclosures in any kind of dispute that wasn't signed by somebody. And again, I'm really mostly concerned with the statutory disclosures more than anything else. So again, that's going to be, what are the statutories, guys? Who can list them off?
Yes.
TDS, not the SPQ, statutory. Nope. TDS,
SBSA.
One.
no. So the statutories, the ones that are required by law, no, I'll tell you. The TDS, the NHD, the lead when it's necessary, the earthquake when it's necessary, the fire hardening, and the defensible space. Those are the only six. Those are the only ones that are statutory, those six. Those six. The rest of them are all contractual. It says in the contract that you will fill out an SPQ. You can counter that out. I've actually seen transactions that have the SPQ countered out. You cannot counter out a TDS. It's against the law. The only time that their transaction will not have a TDS is if they're TDS exempt, right? If it's certain situations. And we have a form over there, a quick guide on that bulletin board over there that gives you all the exemptions.
You mentioned that the earthquake was statutory.
Only if pre-1960. So if the house is built before 1960, it's required by law, that questionnaire.
And is there a car form for the earthquake, or is
Mhm.
it just that little earthquake?
It's that little earthquake checkbox thing. You have to give them the earthquake book, and then they have to the seller has to fill out that little questionnaire. Is my wall unreinforced? Do I have a triple wall? Do I have this, that, or the other? They have to fill that out. It becomes,
By law,
yeah,
okay,
it becomes
it's not a
statute.
car form,
Mhm.
It's a little disclosure form.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Yeah, and same thing with lead. Pre-1978, you must fill out whether you're aware of it can be both. So here's a great question. Do you have to use the car form, or can you use a non-car form? We're using non-car forms all the time, right? When we take anything from our NHD company, right? NHD itself is not a car form. It's an NHD form. Every company has its own form. So we can use non-CAR forms. That is fine. And the ones that we're using, when we're doing fire hardening through our NHD, it does not say CAR on it anywhere, right? Those forms are there for us to use, but they're not required. You could, if you wanted to, pull a TDS off of a legal website and use that TDS. As long as it's asking the questions that are in a TDS, you're good to go. Okay, so the car forms are there for our support and to make our life easier. Okay, let's see. What's next? What's next here? So again, we have a place for offers, dead offers, and then archived files. So Randy, back to your question, if you got a form like maybe like the Bakersfield or the Kern County form that says you have to hook up to the sewer, even though the house is being sold up here, and they send it to you, you could put that over in miscellaneous documents if you wanted to. You could leave it in disclosures. It really doesn't matter. As long as it's in the transaction somewhere and we go to some kind of litigation or some kind of mediation or something, we just need to be able to go get them. This organizational file is for our convenience so that we can find everything when we need to find it. If you don't have it in exactly the right spot, I'm not going to throw you in jail. You guys are fine. You know, it's not the end of the world. As long as it's in your transaction somewhere is really the key. All right. So do we have any questions about the file structure? Any questions about where everything goes?
It's all about just getting on there and trying it out.
Yeah, getting on there and trying it out.